hospital horror story. I ain't been in a hospital in a minute. Well, I take that back. I did go to the hospital.
I've worked as a
Had a
nurse
checkup.
in multiple
Well,
hospitals
a
and
clinic.
facilities. Before the current hospital I work at, I worked at a geriatric hospital 30 minutes from my house. I had experience working with older patients before, so this was nothing new to me. I had been working at this hospital for only a couple of weeks, and you'll soon understand why. This was on my second to last shift at this hospital, unbeknownst to me at the start of that night. I
Second.
was working the graveyard
So I
shift,
quit this
and I was
bitch.
running on negative hours of sleep. I was
Ooh,
assigned to the Alzheimer's ward.
it's
The
rough.
patients in this ward absolutely adored me. My presence as a young girl in her 20s among the residents of this ward who were otherwise left to themselves to float around in their minds, I'm sure saw me as a breath of fresh air, someone who could tie them to the now or to the everyday. If you're just left to yourself, you can mentally go to other places, but with someone else in your space, you're tied to that moment in time. I was dealing with a number of patients that night, but one was a little more restless than the others. Her name was Lena. This was my first night dealing with her, and she kept
Lena.
telling me anytime I'd enter her room about the voices she kept hearing and the man dressed in black she kept seeing in the corner of the room. The other lady
Oh
in her
boy.
room requested her curtain be closed before my shift started so that Lena would leave her alone. She was a sweet lady that smiled when
Oh
everyone
yeah,
was around
no,
her, but
it's
she didn't say
two to a
much and was
room.
very forgetful. Since I started my shift around 9 p.m., most of the patients were asleep by 11, but not Lena. Whenever she called me into the room, she'd be frightened of these alleged voices she was hearing and the man in black that kept staring at her in the corner of the room. Not gonna lie, it was creeping me out a little. I believed that in her mind she was seeing and hearing these things, and I sympathized with her because I imagined them to be very scary.
I'd be like, uh, describe to me what this man looks like. So if I see him, I know that's what you're talking about, and I can go in the opposite direction. Cause I'm like, what are you talking about? You saying the exact same thing every time. There's a man in black, and I hear voices. Like I said, she could be senile. He said it's a geriatric unit, so she could just be have dementia or whatever. But still, I'd be like, just because you never know, it could be somebody in there that you might be missing, or like uh, another patient is like sneaking around or something. I mean, you would think an older person sneaking around, they would be able to sneak very easily around in a hospital, but
Still, I tried my
never
best to
know.
calm her down and get her to go to sleep. I didn't want to turn on the TV to calm her down because I wanted to be courteous of the other patient in the room. I held Lena's hands and told her it's okay, to breathe and to relax. I reminded her that she wasn't here alone, and I was always just a call away. This seemed to do the trick. Lena relaxed for a while, and the next time I came in the room, she was asleep. Once most, if not all, of the patients are asleep, the night goes much slower. Time almost moves in reverse. An hour or two later, I was in the linen room stocking my cart when I heard something in the room. It was a relatively small, dead quiet room. I had the door closed too. That's why hearing another noise was weird. I turned, saw nothing, and resumed stocking my cart. Then I felt what I can only describe to be a hand on my shoulder.
No shit.
I looked at my shoulder, jumped, and
It's
screamed.
the Grim
There was
Reaper.
nothing on my shoulder. There was no one in the room. Yet I knew I felt something large basically grab my shoulder. I went out in the hall for a second to peek my head. No other nurses in sight. Dead quiet. I had nothing else to do but resume what I was doing. I continued stocking the cart until it was full. Then I turned to face the door, and I fell to the floor and started screaming as my heart was immediately in my throat. There was a man dressed in black standing outside the door, looking through
Shit,
the glass,
man.
smiling. My screams were loud enough to wake the entire ward. The man disappeared out of sight through the glass
Mass
window in the
hysteria.
door. Seconds later, the door opened and one of my fellow nurses came in to help me off the floor
Dogs
as
and
I was
cats
hysterical.
living together.
I asked her if she
Mass
saw the man
hysteria.
dressed in black. Her response was, "What man? There's no one else here." We checked all the rooms in the ward. There wasn't anybody dressed in black in there. My screams woke Lena from whatever light sleep she must have been in, and when I came into her room, she started talking of the voices. This time the screams, which she didn't know were my screams. I asked her what this
Oh,
man in
she
black
heard
looked
that in
like,
her sleep.
if he was smiling, and she looked at me, and I noticed her eyebrows point down as her expression changed to look the most focused I'd seen her the entire day. She asked, "How did you know?" And even with my heart still racing, I felt it skip a beat as she said this. She started screaming now, screaming, "Get me out of here, he's coming." The other nurses came in and tried to calm her down. I was switched to a different ward that night with someone else, and I eventually ended up going home early because I was just so freaked out. I texted the head nurse the next day that
Oh, that was
shift
nice
would
of
be my
them.
last, that the experience traumatized me, and that I
He's
didn't really want to be in that building anymore.
he said, "Fuck a 2 week
I got as
notice."
friendly of a response as I could have hoped for. I've never been diagnosed with anything, nor have I ever dealt with hallucinations of any kind. I'm aware of the effects of lack of sleep, but this was next level. I don't know if my mind started playing tricks on me from what Lena was telling me all night, but the feeling of the hand on my shoulder, the image of the smiling man behind the glass door, matching the description a patient kept giving multiple times. This was one of those once-in-a-lifetime, unexplainable supernatural occurrences. At least, I hope it was once in a lifetime. Before the next story, I want to thank Guardio for sponsoring this video. Stories like the ones you hear on this channel are the reason why you need to be vigilant of your surroundings.
I'll wait
And many
until
people
after
spend the
that.
majority of their time on the internet, so it's also important to be vigilant regarding your safety browsing the web. Guardio is an easy-to-use browser extension that, simply put, keeps you safe from scams and identity theft, so that you can do what you do online without worrying.
Oh, wait, I've heard
By
of
using
it.
Guardio, you'll protect your online browsing and information.
I think somebody else, some other channel I was watching, I think was sponsored by this.
Device when your information could be at risk.
It sounds
Everybody's encountered
familiar.
dangerous and annoying pop-ups while browsing the web. Guardio will immediately
Oh,
block any
Troll. I
sites
saw
and
this on
providers that send
Netflix.
malvertising
That movie
pop-ups
Troll.
when you
There.
browse in peace.
I heard it was
Being a
actually
YouTuber means hours of work
decent.
online, so I wasn't
I've
too
heard it was
surprised that
actually
Guardio's
pretty
looking
good
all
to
these
decent.
threats
So
on my system. Right now, Guardio is offering a special deal for
I mean,
my
I guess that's
viewers.
better than it
20% off
sucks.
the monthly subscription if you use my link. So if you want a clean and secure
Say
browsing
Guardio.
experience, go to guard.io/Mr. Nightmare. Link in the description, and check out their affordable premium plan for full protection.
Okay, I was gonna say. I've told this story before. Watching another video, I had an incident similar to this when I was in the service, and I was working late one night because I was going on leave the next day. Well, actually, my leave started the next day, but I was going to leave that night to just drive back home. But I had a hard time sleeping for at that point for the past 3 days. I think I slept maybe 2-3 hours. I don't know why. That used to happen quite a bit in my 20s and in my teens, where I would just not be able to sleep. Or I would just go to sleep and then wake up, and I would just continue for days. But probably should have seen somebody about that. But anyway, I was working it was around midnight, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to sleep, and I was like, I did all my work because I was gonna take 2 weeks off. So anytime I took leave, I did that. I made sure I did all my work, or as much, because we had customers, so kind of always an influx of people. But what I had, made sure that it was all prepared, so that way if any of my customers come in while I was gone, somebody could just look at my drawer and just help them without having to do my job for me. But anyway, I get up and I'm just like, all right, I'm thinking first. I kind of wrote it off, but now thinking about it, I remember hearing sounds, and I was like, oh, it's probably people in the building. And I found out later on that I was the only person in the building. Somebody that did, I think it was the captain. No, she wasn't the captain. She was a first lieutenant at the time. She didn't rank up yet. But she thinks she was the second to last person other than me. And because I remember hearing her door close, around. I think that she stayed, but she's left 8 or something. I think 8 p.m. And like I said, I left at midnight. It was exactly 12, and I said, all right, I'm leaving. as soon as I said 12, I left. I got up, walked out. I remember hearing noise, and I was like, and I thought I heard something, because the door was locked. So we were in a big office, and we had a desk in there, and my desk was probably one of the closest ones to the door, other than our actual superintendent that was in there. The door that led into the office, and then her office was the door was like right next to it. So it was like you walk in and you see her office like right next to it. Anyway, I remember hearing like I thought I heard uh, someone jiggling the door like they was trying to come in. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Because I was like, if someone because we all had keys to the door. So anyone who worked there, you had a key. And then when they moved you to another office, you gave that key back. And then you got another key to another office. But I could have sworn I heard, and I was like, I remember I got up because I heard it multiple times throughout the time I was there that night. One time I like turned around and like stopped. And then I was thinking, okay, maybe it's the air conditioner or something like that because the air was on. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And it sounds even creepy when you hear like, and it because it wasn't like someone jiggling a lot, like they was furiously trying to open it. It was like someone trying to be quiet and like slowly turning it. And I was like, the fuck was that? And then it sounded like I heard like someone running through the hallway, but it sounded like it was in one direction, like it was close and then getting further away. I was like, maybe I don't know. I'm thinking because like mind you, I say it again, I hadn't really slept in like 3 days. I think, like I said, I get about 2-3 hours of sleep for 3 days straight, and I'm like maybe one of the I was like I forget the other person's name that was down the hall that I saw before the lieutenant left. I saw them. I was like, maybe her son or something came, or her husband with their kids. And sometimes that way they would come and I hear them running the hallway. But I said, nah. And then I was started thinking, nah, my feet were too heavy. So then when I was leaving, I said, all right, I'm gone. And I remember standing at the door before I left, like waiting to see if the lock, like if somebody out there, like as soon as I open this door, they gonna like hit me in the face or some shit, or somebody got in there, and trying to see if they can get in the offices and steal shit, like I don't know. I was like, I had to call security force to come in here, but I stood there, I don't know, probably like a minute or something, and then I opened the door, and I remember like cracking, looking up like that. No, I didn't see anybody because also it was a stairway right next. As soon as you walk out the door, it was a stairway that went down to the first floor. So that was that. Sometimes you hear people like walk down the stairs, but and the lieutenant office was like on the right when you walked out the door. So then I'm walking out. Anyway, I'm leaving, walking down the hallway, and all the way down the hallway. Because now it's just a big long hall on the second floor. Because basically it's like, I just said, I ain't gonna go how many hallways, but the top floor is basically one big long hallway. And you could see all the way down, it was the commander's like offices and they had this glass door. There were these 2 glass doors they kind of open and swung in it open like that. And you could see your reflection, especially at night, because it only had like every other light on and the hallway was on. And I'm walking down, and I'm thinking, because when I heard something, I remember stopping and looking back behind me, and I thought I heard something walk behind me. And then I remember, I was all right, and I just kind of just brushed it off, kept walking forward, and then I'm looking at the glass door. Like I said, I can see my reflection in it, even from as far away as we were. Because a pretty good distance, I'd say probably about 10 yards. No, maybe longer than 10 yards. Maybe about 15 yards. Maybe something like that. But, and then I was walking down the hallway. I see something looks like it's behind me, because I'm like walking, and then I look up because I'm kind of looking at the ground. I look up, and I see it like when I stepped to the side, like something was behind me. And then I was like, "Is that?" And I remember stopping. I was like, "That's some." I was like, "What is that?" And I kind of like moved aside to see if it was behind me. Whatever it looked like, it wasn't behind me. It was in front of me. And I'm like, and it was like an old woman. And she was like just standing still. Probably like she, I mean, because I'm like 6'2", and looking at like she was hunched over. And so it's like she was probably like to my, her head probably been like up to the bottom part of my chest, like right here. The top of her head probably right here. If it's standing up, obviously. And then all of a sudden, she starts screaming and start hauling ass down the hallway. Like, and it was weird because it was like she wasn't. It like she was sprinting, but it was almost like she was clearing more ground than you would sprinting. Like almost like she was gliding, but she was like running and doing a running motion. And I was like, what? Because like I said, I hadn't slept in a while, so like my reaction time was way slower. And I remember backing up, and it was like just screaming. It was so loud, and when she like came, like when it got like close to me, all of a sudden I felt like a gust of wind. Like she like almost like disappeared. Probably about 10 feet, maybe 9 feet from me. And it was like a big gust of wind, almost like knocked me off my feet. And then I looked like, I like turned around behind me and I looked forward again, back down the hallway towards the glass doors. And it was like something hit the glass doors and they just shook like violently because the doors were locked. And it was like just shook like violently. And when that happened, I ran out that place so fast. Like I tripped on the steps, but caught myself and I like slammed into the wall. Because the stairs they went down like this and then went like that and then you walk down another like flight of stairs. I was like, hit the wall. I ran out of it so fast. I kicked the door open like to get out because it was a push from the inside, a push out. Oh man, I ran out. I ran all the way to my car. Now, mind you, I don't believe in that stuff. But and like I said, I was sleep deprived. But still, that shit scared the fuck. And then also, a little side note to that. I guess footnote. A woman had died in that building. No, this was years before I was there. Like I think they said, because I remember a guy told me, he said that she died in like the 50s because that building was built in the 50s, and I guess she was one of the first people working there. And he said she had she was working late, and apparently she was a much older woman, and she had a heart attack in there and died. And they found her the next day. I don't know what the woman looked like. So I'm just saying, I saw an old woman. Now he told me that story after the fact, actually. So it wasn't like this where this woman told him about a man in black. Because you could be like, oh, your mind kind of playing tricks on you, stuff like that. This dude told me that because I told him about this story. I told him about what I saw, and I said, hey, I was sleep deprived, stuff like that. And then he brought up, he's like, oh, there's a woman that died in that building in the 50s. And that was an older woman. I was like, and I remember hearing that. And some of the other people that was standing there was like, that's creepy. was like, that's creepy. And I was like, yeah, I still don't believe it. I was like, I kind of just like whatever. I was like, I was sleep deprived, so I just chalked it up to that.
3 years ago, I contracted bacterial meningitis. I live in South Florida. I don't believe there was an outbreak going on
That
where I
kind of look
live,
like that thing from
so
the
I'm not sure
faculty.
how I caught it or who I could have caught it from. I started developing really bad symptoms: painful headaches, confusion, sleepiness, nausea, and lack of appetite. But when the hallucinations started, that's when I knew I had something really serious. Laying sick in bed while my husband was at work, I heard a child's voice call Mom from downstairs. We don't have any kids. I
Oh
dragged
shit.
myself out of bed to look down the stairway to call my husband's
We
name.
don't have any
Of course,
kids,
he
so
didn't
like,
answer because he was at work. The headache I had from standing was too much, so I went back to bed. For a second time, I heard a voice call from downstairs. It said hello. I picked up the phone and
these
called my
fucking
husband. It freaked me out to
sound
him into the
cues.
phone that I was hearing a scary child's voice from inside the house, and that I thought I was hallucinating. He heard how distressed I was over the phone, and so he left work early to bring me to the hospital. While waiting for him to get home, I changed out of my pajamas, and while doing so, I had to run to the bathroom to throw up. As I was mid-throwing up, I heard another voice from outside of the bathroom. I couldn't hear what it might have said.
Oh, she
nor
closed
could
the
I tell if it
bathroom
sounded
door.
the same as the other voice I heard. I was losing my mind. I wasn't diagnosed until I arrived at the hospital, and apparently, if untreated, what I had could be very serious, even fatal. The doctor told me the hallucinations part was rather unusual, but not unheard of. I was given antibiotics through a needle shortly after I arrived at the hospital with my husband. The doctor told me that I was fortunate to have come to the hospital so quickly, as if I had waited much longer, this could have had lasting effects or possibly have been fatal. My husband stayed with me for a few hours in the room. I was told I was going to have to stay there for a few days to a week, given the severity of my symptoms. Around 10 o'clock, my husband left to go home, as he had work the next day. The nurse told me call her if I should have any issues. Though I still felt like absolute death, I nodded off pretty quickly. I started having this dream where my ex-husband was in the room, over my bed, looking down at me, talking. He was saying horrible things about my current husband. He patted my head and said he was glad I was okay, and that he came as soon as he saw my husband left. He went into this rant about how he despises my current husband and wants to kill him. He kept rubbing my forehead, then left the room.
Is she hallucinating?
I often have bad dreams about my ex-husband because of how toxic and abusive our marriage was, and why it ended, which I'd rather not include. I woke up in this drowsy, lightheaded state and looked around the room. There was a chair pulled up in front of my hospital bed, but no one was sitting in it. It wasn't like that when my husband left. It was still the middle of the night, so I went back to sleep. I woke up the next morning to the nurse in the room. I told her about the weirdly vivid dream I had, and she laughed and told me that wasn't a dream, that my cousin came to visit me last night.
Cousin.
I told her I don't have any cousins that live in this
Bullshit.
state. She looked more serious now and said, well, someone who said they're your cousin David visited you late last night. David was the name of my ex-husband.
Oh, fuck.
After explaining better, the nurse got a doctor, and the doctor told me the antibiotics may have caused delirium, which hindered my ability to recognize sleep from wakefulness, hence why I was so vividly hearing what David was saying. I called my husband to tell him what happened, and of course he was livid and concerned. He came back again that night after work.
I'm about to beat his ass.
I texted David, asking what the hell he was thinking visiting me, and how did he know I was in the hospital.
They keeping tabs on your
delivered,
ass.
But he ignored it. I sent a follow-up, telling him I heard all of his threats towards my husband and that I'd be getting police involved. And minutes later, he responded saying, I never made any
He
threats towards your husband.
to that.
I was simply there when I heard what happened to make sure you were okay. You must have heard things in your sleep. I responded, stay out of my life or I'll get police involved again. He didn't respond after this. I never told my husband about the threats I heard in my drowsy half-asleep state, because I didn't know if they were real or not. With a mix of the antibiotics and my already having weird audible hallucinations the day before, I don't think it's impossible that what I heard wasn't actually what was said. But I could be wrong. I left the hospital the next week.
Yeah. Damn, I hate this thing, like mouse. Like this. Well, I mean, I don't really have anything scary, but well, not like that. But why do we as people we always wait till last minute to go to the hospital? I mean, I get it if you don't have you don't have insurance and you ain't any money, and you're like, well, hope that you'll just get better. Because she had this. At first, I thought that she went to the hospital already, but she didn't. She went to the hospital after she started hallucinating. Because that happened to me when I was, I think, what was I? I was 20, and I had mono, and that was probably one of the worst things I've ever had. Like, I've had bad cases of the flu, stuff like that, but that shit like kicked my ass. Like, I had that because I was like, oh, I'll get over it. I didn't know I had mono at the time. I just thought I was sick. I had like green sores on the back of my throat, like lime green colored sore. And I was like, they people talk about fatigue. Like, that was true fatigue. Because sometimes people just be tired and they think it's fatigue. Like, no. This was going to sleep and sleeping for like 12, 14 hours. And then getting up and still being tired. Like almost like I didn't sleep. And then I went to work with it. Luckily, I wasn't in school at the time. Because I didn't go to school. I didn't go back to school because I thought I was start basic training in October, so I didn't start the semester. And then I remember my recruiter was like, "I didn't say that." I was like, "Yes, you did. You did say that." He was like, "No, I didn't say that." Like, and he's like, "I didn't say that. You must have thought I said something." I'm like, "Okay." So I didn't start school. And then I was supposed to go. I'm sorry, that wasn't October. It was August, because I had mono in October. And because then he switched it to October, because he said I was supposed to go in August, and then I thought he said that, and then he's like, no, I didn't say that, and then I was actually supposed to go, I think October the 11th. It was sometime in October. I was supposed to go to basic training, and then I got mono. Well, technically I got mono before that, so I had it in September, because I had it for like a little bit over 3 weeks before I finally went to the hospital. And I remember, I had to call the recruiter, tell him I was sick. And then he was like, okay, we'll push it back. And that's when I ended up pushing it all the way back to February of the next year. But I remember sitting there, I was still going to work. And at the time I was working at UPS. And I was still like just so sick. I wasn't throwing up. Nothing. It was just a fatigue, and I couldn't swallow it just hurt to swallow. Even it started hurting to swallow water. I wasn't eating. I lost quite a bit of weight in that little, like I said, basically a month. And my dad was like, "You need to go to the hospital. Let me know." And then I remember sitting there at the kitchen table with my head down, like on the table. And then finally I was like, all right, I need to go to the hospital. So we go to the emergency room, and we went to the emergency room. We sat in there for 8 hours, a little bit over 8 hours, in the emergency room. There was a man in there before I got there that was sitting in front of us, well, kind of in front of us. He had like a deep cut on his leg. This man was bleeding, and it was just flowing all on the floor. He was there before us. He got taken back. I think it was like 2 or 3 hours before they took us back. And he was just bleeding and on the floor, just out his leg, just stream, like it was just like a stream of blood just flowing away from him. And I was like, and then somebody came and like cleaned it up, like one of the janitors. But it just crazy, and that place was packed with people. And I remember when I first went in there, the nurse saw me, and she was looking at my lymph nodes had swollen up, like on my neck, so much that you could see them. They were swollen. And the nurse was like, personal, she's oh man. And then she looked down my mouth and stuff like that, saw the sore. You could see the lymph nodes swollen in my mouth too. And I remember when I saw the doctor, they looked at it, because they basically took me to the back. They said I was dehydrated, and they gave me, I forget what medication they gave me there, but then they gave me a prescription that I had to pick up. And I remember the doctor said if I'd have waited probably about maybe another 2-3 days, that my lymph nodes they would have swollen so much that it would have cut off my my windpipe, and I would have probably died because they said it would have just cut off, and you'd have just woken up either sleeping or you'd have woken up not being able to breathe. And I was like, I was like, well, that was good because I mean, I could see. I remember being able to see my neck. Cause I had that anime neck. It was like it was like swollen bad. And it just like you start feeling bad, just go to the hospital, just go to a clinic. Like even if you don't have insurance, like they can't turn you away. It's like,
I once matched this girl that I'm still friends with on Tinder named Francesca. She seemed cool right from the bat. She had a sleeve of tattoos on her left arm, red highlights in her hair, and she had in her profile that she loved to work out. One of her pictures was taken on the rooftop of this cool looking building with a sick view. I asked her where it was, and she told me it was some abandoned hospital on the edge of town that's super cool to explore at night. It's super easy to get into. There's usually one cop patrolling the huge parking lot at night to deter trespassers. But she said it was super easy to circumvent. She came up with the idea of us going there together
She
as
was
our first
super
date of
hot.
sorts, if you want to use the word date. I was totally on board with it.
You
She
used the
seemed
word
cool,
date.
and it seemed like a cool, different kind of way to meet someone as opposed to the usual let's get drinks. I picked her up from her house 10 minutes away.
I think I
We
prefer
drove
to
20
get
minutes
drinks
to get to the hospital.
or even coffee.
Those 20 minutes gave us a nice chance to get to know each other a bit and get comfortable with each other's personalities for a little. When we got to the hospital,
Let's go to some
she told me to park on
abandoned
this dead-end
building.
street
Like,
hidden by a bunch of tall bushes, which was a 5-minute walk to the inside of the hospital. We hopped this little barrier separating the road from the hospital parking lot, and then we jogged across the wide open lot.
I hope
towards the
this
grass
chick
right
ain't
next to the
crazy.
entrance she said she always used. She led us to this broken window to the basement of the hospital. It seemed kind of creepy, but I signed up for this. I was glad I wore
Trying to
red
get
jeans when she
laid.
told me to, because I knew I was going to rip them on something. We used our phone flashlights. We didn't bring any special heavy-duty lights or anything. She seemed to know this whole hospital like the back of her hand. She led us to the stairway to the upstairs.
She been there before.
I gotta say, being alone with one other person in a place like this at night was very scary. But I had no idea how scary it was.
Oh, I thought that was someone standing there.
On the first floor, Francesca kept talking so loud.
I was about to say,
wanted to tell her to shh.
until it's scary and horny.
Because of her
Then I
voice.
saw that like a
Down the
person.
corridor we were in, it sounded like a door was opening or closing. Something echoed down the corridor to us. She heard it too and went silent.
Another thing, like I've had that happen when I've gone in like abandoned places, like abandoned buildings, stuff like that, abandoned apartment buildings and stuff. And I've never went in at night. It's always during the day. I've never been in a place like that at night. But the only thing I've been to abandoned buildings, like with friends, and we just throw rocks and like try to like break the windows. Like that's the only thing. You could tell the people have already been doing that. So we was like, see if we could just either keep breaking it or break more of them. But something like that happened where I was in a building, and which was I think it was I think I've told this before because it was a building, but it was next to our apartment building, and it used to be a pharmacist because it was open when we moved there, and then they closed. We were there for 4 years. And it closed like I think the next year. 'Cause I remember it was open, and then because some of the older people who lived in our apartment complex used to go there to get like prescriptions filled, and ended up closing. Somebody broke the front window because it was like a big giant. Like the whole front was like a big old window, and someone broke it. Probably kids walking around there because it was of course it was a residential area over there too, but we were on a road that had like shops all the way down it. But of course behind those was residential areas. But anyway, someone broke that window and then they put a big old piece of like wood up there to block it, and then they boarded it up, and then they boarded up the door because people were going in there, and so they ended up boarding up the front door, but the back door was like I don't know if it was boarded up because it wasn't. I don't know if it was boarded up. It could have been boarded up, but maybe it was just locked because I remember we tried to open the door once and it wouldn't open. And then we just, we were kids and we just went on and did something else. But one particular day, we were back there because they had kind of like it was an alley behind there, and it was kind of like it's like a little area because they used to, it's like a box truck used to come over and do deliveries for them when they were open, and that we went back there and the door had been kicked in, and it had been kicked in so much like it like fucked up the side of the door where the lock was at. They kicked that and broke that, but the door was kind of like partially cracked, and I was like, oh shit. And then my friend was like, let's go in. And so we just went in, and we went in, and I remember it was pitch black in there, even in broad daylight, because the front doors were boarded up, and you couldn't see. You could kind of see like a little bit of light coming through like little spots they missed, but it was so dark in there. And it was upstairs because the person who was a pharmacist there was an apartment upstairs. So I guess he would stay up there. I remember he had a son that had he was a junkie, and he would be able to, because sometimes we would see him. And I remember my dad had pissed off because he kept asking him for money, and my dad would give him some sometimes, and he felt like he kept asking because he would ask him for money. My dad would give him some, and my dad would go up upstairs to the apartment and then come back out and do something that he asked for money. He's like, dude, I literally just saw you 2 minutes. I just gave you some money. And then he got pissed off. He really got pissed off when I told my dad that he asked me for some money. And my dad wanted that. He's like, well, he didn't go out there right then. The next time he saw him, he said, don't you be asking my son for no money. He said, you don't be asking none of these kids for no money. My dad got pissed off. But like his son was like, and then when they left, they were gone. But we went inside, and I was so like couldn't see, so I was like, we'll just leave the door open. But the door, because someone who kicked it in, it's probably some teenage kids fucking around there. And when they kicked it in, the door wouldn't stay closed. Wouldn't stay open. So you opened all the way, it would just like kind of do back there back to this little crack in it. And then, so we put like, where did we put something that was inside the place, like to keep the proper door open so the light could come in and we could see. And I remember we walked all the way inside. And I walked all the way inside to where the cash register was, because it was like cash register still there. And we just in there, and you could see like dust, of course, with the light coming in. It was like thick ass dust. And then we was talking about going upstairs, and I ain't going upstairs, because if somebody come, I was thinking I don't want to be trapped. But then I'm like, technically we are trapped already because it's only one way out, because the front door is boarded up. But no, I wasn't thinking that far. I don't want to go upstairs because I'd be trapped. But I remember hearing something drop. I don't know where it came from. All I know is behind me. I don't know if it was upstairs, because now that I'm thinking about it, it might have been just on the same floor, on the same ground floor we were on. It just probably because there was stuff like stacked up on like shelves. It was like cobwebs all over the place. So it might have been something that fell like that, but I don't know. All I know is I heard like a loud. It was like something like was sliding, and then like boom, it was like boom, like it slid off and then hit the ground. And I just hold at like me and my two other friends. We just hold at, cause one of them was in front of me, and I was like near the cash register, like this like desk would have had a cash register on top of it, and one of my friends like in a little part where, because there was some chairs there, I guess there was like a little waiting area, and they also had some like other shelves up there, but nothing was on those that I can remember. And my other friend, I don't know where he must have been behind me. or he was next to me or something. But all I know is it was just like we all just turned in the direction of the sign, just. But it came from behind us, so it was like we gotta run back that way because that's what the door said. So we ran that way, and I remember having to open the door. So that was the first one to the door. I remember that. So I don't know, like something, and I don't even remember because with the door, it was because it was propped open. We had propped it open with something, and the door was not propped open anymore. But it was like, but it wasn't closed all the way to a crack. It only closed like probably about halfway. So it was probably like about this much. Now it's like a normal was like this. When we first went, it was like crack, and then when we opened it up, it did that again. It went back to that crack. So I don't know why it was like that, and I didn't even remember hearing that happen or nothing. So I don't know what the fuck. Like I don't know whatever. All I know is just getting the fuck out. I remember running out. I remember running past the stairs because, like I said, you had to walk past the stairs that led up into the apartment, and they were basically right by where the desk was, up front where the cash register was on. And all I saw was just this like darkness. It was just like that's why I didn't want to go up there because it was just black, and especially because the way the light was shining in, because it was like blackness and the light was shining like this, so it looked even more like just a black void. And I remember just running up and looking, and my little young mind, I was like, did I see like I thought I saw like a figure in it, and I was like, but I was just trying to get the fuck out. I don't know what fell. It was stuff on the floor, but some of the stuff might have been on the floor already. We ran out that place so fast, and the door just stayed like that for a while. Like it was just like open like that. And instead of cracked, it was just open. And then I remember it was months later, some people went in there and they were like gutting the whole place out. And I don't know what, I guess they were getting ready to try to sell it or something. They hired somebody to go in there. But that shit scared one of my friends said he went back in there by himself. And I was like, I ain't going back in there.
I asked her in a whisper,
fuck
is it
out
normal
here.
for others to be here? And she said sometimes, but not really. We turned off our flashlights and waited.
I was said as a get the fuck out, it said GFO. Get fuck out.
Scrambled in the dark. I followed her, barely able to see. We made it back to the stairway and ran up the stairs with our lights back on. When we were a couple levels higher, we felt it was okay to speak at a normal volume again. Francesca told me the police never come in here, so it may have been other explorers. But the weird thing was there was no sign of another light in that corridor. Nobody normal would be walking in the dark. Then we heard sounds echoing from the exit stair
Maybe it's
shaft,
stair
where
door.
we just were. Someone was coming up the stairs. Once again, we scrambled. She led the way, saying she knew where to go. We ran for a few minutes.
It sounded like somebody know y'all in there.
I was truly freaking out. It seemed like we were being followed.
That's why you bring a
I wasn't
weapon.
sure if I would rather have it been the cops or someone else. She led us to this mini outside spot. We weren't on the highest rooftop, but I guess we were on what you'd call the rooftop of this level. We stopped to catch our breath. The whole being followed thing was killing the vibe completely. Even she seemed
wasn't even horny
I looked
anymore.
her as the expert with this place. After a few minutes, we relaxed a bit and went through this broken window into the ceiling of this one large room. This part was scary because she wanted to walk along these long, narrow wooden planks with a 10-foot drop below us.
Oh, hell no.
A fall from this height would cause injury, but I didn't want to seem like a pussy.
I'm afraid of heights. I'd have been like,
I followed her across the sketchy, long wooden board.
I don't care how much pussy you gonna give me. I ain't walk across
that. And another one started. We sat on this pillar to just chill and talk, with our legs dangling over the edge, overlooking the darkness below. It was creepy in there, and I thought we were all alone, until there was a sound from below us. It sounded like someone walking. Our presence was already made known to whoever was in there, so we turned on our flashlights and aimed them down below. Right below us,
Michael Myers
pillar,
looking up at you.
Looking up at us, there was this 40-something-year-old man in a black Carhartt beanie, wearing a black jacket and black sweatpants.
Damn, he really didn't want to be spotted. He went all black.
Deep voice, come on down. He was waving us to come down.
But won't you come on up?
I asked, are you police? He disregarded my question as if he didn't hear me and repeated, come on down, with with his creepy smile. Francesca and I got up scared and started walking back across the narrow piece of wood. I was even more scared of falling now than before. I had no idea what that man would do to us. As we were about halfway across, the man hurried out of the room below us through a door. He was most definitely going to try to catch us. We had to hurry. We made it across and tried to get out of there, knowing that man was dangerous.
Like, how old are you?
As
You
we were running
adults?
down the stairs in the
I
shed
mean, I
on
guess
the
it don't really
opposite side
matter.
of the
Still
hospital,
scared.
we heard the door a few flights above us open and slam shut, and then footsteps stomping down the steps. He somehow had followed us. We were hauling ass as if we were running for our lives. We made it back to the first floor.
Because you
We
were.
ran back to the opposite side of the hospital where we entered from. We went back to the basement and climbed through the broken window. The whole process of climbing through that window was haunting, because I went out second, and I was afraid my legs would be grabbed at any moment. But I think by that point,
Should have let that chick go out second.
We
Shit.
ran back
It's
across
her
the
fault
parking
you
lot
here.
back to my car, and when we made it, first thing we did was lock the doors and catch our breath again. That was a complete nightmare, and somehow, us getting through it together created a sort of instant bond between us. We drove away from there and stopped at a Wendy's to get food and just collect our thoughts in the car. We chilled for an hour.
We
talking,
almost
and we
died.
draw.
We should stay
Francesca and I
friends.
stayed in contact through the years. And while we were romantically involved for a few months, we ended up just staying good friends. Neither of us ever
No,
returned to that hospital
that's
again.
nice. Had a little like bonding moment there. Usually people bond over, I guess, happy things. But you two bonded over tragedy. Well, almost near tragedy. That's why you doing shit like that. Take a weapon with you. Cause I know when I get a little bit older and go in places like that. Like, but I was always during daytime cause I need to see. If it was too dark, then I'm leaving. But I'd like used to take a stick, you know. It is like even when I used to walk out at night when I used to go running. Well, not up here where I live now. When I was in Mississippi, I used to take this old. We had a broomstick, cause the broom, like the part with that, what are those things? The broom part, the small part, not the stick. Like it broke somehow. So I was like, I could use that stick, and my dad was gonna throw it away. I said I can run with that when I go out, cause the one thing, the way I used to run, had like it was some old white dude lived there, and he had this dog that every time anyone walked by, it just start barking, like ferociously. I mean, it's like running, but he always had it like when it was outside. It was in a kennel outside, and I guess he put it out there like at night. But sometimes it would be out. But the first time that happened, that dog, I didn't have this before I had the stick. That dog ran, because before I used to run down there. I would walk, and then I started running when I got more able to walk quickly. I said, I'd start running. Then I start running until I was able to run the whole way and run back. And one time I was running, and this fucking dog, it was a pit bull too. It was like a light brown type pit bull. That dog ran up, just and I saw it. Cause first I'm like, I usually just ignore it because it always barks. But then it's like when I was running, the sound was getting closer, and I looked, and that dog was almost to me, and I was like, oh shit! I was like, oh shit! It's like through my ears, and the dog like stopped, and like, and then the old man came out the door, and he's like, get your ass over here! He's like, go here now! And the dog was still like, and it was just like looking at, and then it like looking back at the dude, and then looking at me, and then barking at me. And he came because he had like some stairs coming down from it, because it was weird because he had like I guess he owned that land over, but he had like, it was like a silver trailer, and Well, it wasn't really silver. It was more. Some of it was silver. Some, it was like really rusted though. But and then it was like he built a, or I don't know. He just put his trailer there or what. But it was like uh, uh, no, I don't know. Was it like an awning? But it was basically like, well, I guess you kind of could say like it was an awning, like over it. Like and it had like metal roof and stuff like that. And he had his trailer underneath it on. It was like concrete. So I don't know what was there before. If he just put it there and no one said anything, but it was there for years until I don't know if he died, but I know I saw some young people there, and then one day his trailer was just gone. So then it was just that concrete slab out there where he had his trailer on, and that uh, like big ass, I guess, awning or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, that was actually a nice dog. Like, cause over the years of me running there, that was like the first few years I was there, and it was actually nice. He was a nice pit bull. The dude was kind of mean, like, cause sometimes his pit bull would run out, and the dog like stopped barking at me, and he just walk up to me, and it's like I was kind of like I wasn't afraid of it, so he just kind of walked up to me and like licked my hand, and I pet it. Cause one time I just stood there, and I had my stick, and I was like, "This dog, try something. I'm gonna beat the shit out of it." With this stick, and and it didn't, and it was a nice little dog, but yeah, I don't know what I think he might have died, or he just got so old. Maybe they put him in a retirement home, or they moved him. He moved like in with one of his kids or something. Cause it was like I remember a dude and a woman there. So like I don't know, maybe both of them as kids. But he was always living there by himself. So. But yeah, that shit that scared the fuck out. I think that I was like, how old was I? Maybe I had been like 14 or 15. So probably was like 14. That shit scared that dog. And it was a decent sized pit bull too. Like you know, like little ass pit bull. Yeah, but it was a nice dog. But yeah. Anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed my reaction. And if you did, make sure to hit that thumbs up button down below. Make sure to subscribe if you're here. Hit that bell if you want to notify when I upload the videos. Comment down below. Share this video. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.